Welcome everyone, and thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this next edition of the webinar series. It's proving to be a really valuable webinar series as we move towards developing national and regional action plans for basically the countries of West Africa, those which are members particularly of the Abidjan Convention, but equally the lessons that we are learning and the best practice ideas that are coming out here from this session and these series will actually be of value to the whole of Africa, which are required to develop national and regional action plans by UNEA and UNEP and others. And it's a wonderful way forward. The series has been structured in such a way as to have basically an introduction and setting the scene, which is done initially by Abu Bamba of the Abidjan Convention, a superb talk, followed by Linda Godfrey, who was a principal author of the African Waste Management Outlook. And she set the scene as to why we actually really do need national and regional action plans, as did Abu Bamba. Then we had a discussion, a panel discussion, and that led to a huge number of questions, as did most of the other aspects as well. We then moved on to the sort of industry components of the issues, where we had Dostane, Eva from Grid Arundel, Annabi Pretorius talking to us, followed by David Drew, who talked to us about not so much the industry side, but their role in terms of developing the necessity to provide an extended producer responsibility aspect. And then Risa Daniels joined us to put into perspective some of the economic principles which underlie the need to not only treat waste as a cost, but also really as a resource, and this was wonderful. And then we moved on with Selma Hoy from Norway, talking to us about a program that they are running in Ghana, principally on chemical recycling, and pyrolysis was the focus of that. And it definitely is a way forward for those plastics which are not readily recyclable, but there are major costs involved in that too. And so while it is an issue for some parts of Africa, we're still seeking a way to have this scaled down to the smaller parts and the smaller countries of Africa. And we saw in the chat box that somebody, Chris White, in fact, has found a way forward, and he's going to be communicating with us on that later. This is followed by a really exciting panel discussion by Risa Daniels, Johan Corradi, and Seth Tum Agwaba. And today we move on to our next talk, and this, to a large extent, is going to be what is happening run by an NGO within Ghana, and returning then to Barbara, who's going to introduce our special speaker of the day. So Barbara, over to you, and thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, and good afternoon to you all. I'm having a bit of good afternoon to you all, and we are very delighted to have our speaker from Ghana. My name is Barbara Gologa, involved in circular economy, but it's my pleasure to introduce Executive Director of Environment 360, Evolve Recycling, and also Circular Innovation Hubs. She'll be speaking on the topic alternative waste collection systems for urban cities in West Africa. And this will be a case study of Environment 360's work in Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly area. Kumasi is the second largest city in Ghana, that's for those who do not know. Cordie brings to this webinar years of experience as the creator of community recycling in Ghana, and has helped to create inclusive waste management systems, helping to reduce plastic litter in communities and waterways, while simultaneously creating jobs for women and youth. In 2019, she was a recipient of the prestigious Point of Light Award from the British High Commission for her work in this sector. She's also recognized for her work internationally as an expert on informal sector waste workers in sub-Saharan Africa. Through her newest project, the Circular Innovation Hub, she and her team are working to close the loop on plastics recycling locally to strengthen plastic value chains and increase the incomes of women waste pickers. To date, they have successfully raised more than $1 million of funding for environmental projects in Ghana. Cordie, we are delighted to have you here. The floor is yours, and please take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara, for the introduction, and thank you so much for having me here today. Really looking forward to speaking with everyone about the work that we've been doing here in Ghana with the informal sector, as well as local municipal assemblies. What we'll be speaking to today is mainly our work that we've been working on in Kumasi through funding provided by the German federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia. So if we can just start, I'll tell you a little bit about Environment 360. Next slide. Environment 360 is a Ghana-based NGO, and what we do is we seek to create inclusive waste management systems that support circularity and create jobs for women and youth. I think we all know that plastic has continued to be one of the biggest opportunities. While many people see it as a menace, Environment 360 sees it as an opportunity to really create employment for the youth that are unemployed. We also specialize on supporting informal sector waste workers and strengthening their businesses by providing business and capacity training. The World Bank has noted that 50 to 100% of waste recycling in developing countries is done by the informal sector worker. What we've realized through our work is a lot of them do have functioning businesses, but what they need support in is formalizing them and being recognized as valuable partners in the waste management system. We typically use a co-design approach with our partners, and we work closely with municipal assemblies in order to create alternative waste management systems. Next slide. So basically, if we can go back one more slide. So basically what we've been doing is working with Kumasi for the past 2 years on creating an inclusive waste management system. If we can go forward one. I think we're skipping a slide, but it's fine. Basically, what we do, we've been working with Kumasi is creating an inclusive waste management system. As Barbara mentioned, Kumasi is actually the second largest city in Ghana. Kumasi has been known for a green Kumasi agenda, which is really taking a serious look at how it can tackle plastic. What Environment 360 has been doing is been working with them to better understand how informal sector workers can better be incorporated into municipal assemblies. Ghana, like most West African countries and Africa in general, struggles with having an informal tax base, meaning that it does not collect taxes for more than 70% of the people working. This makes it very hard to subsidize a waste system that is fair. It also makes it very difficult for people to be able to participate in an inclusive system. With the system still being dominated by 1 or 2 players, you will find that many people are doing the work but aren't recognized or are being kept at the very bottom of the ladder. So what we've been doing is testing that if we set up plastic collection points in certain areas and organize collectors around them, can we actually lower the cost for municipal assemblies? Environment 360 believes that if municipal assemblies are willing to partner with informal sector workers, then it can actually lower the cost of waste management, reduce the amount of waste going to the landfill, as well as support more jobs in communities. So just a little bit about Environment 360, our history. We were founded in 2014. In 2015, we actually, we have a private company called Evolve, which is attached to the organization. We actually created the first successful community recycling program for plastics. Through that success, we were actually named the 2016 City Recycling Coordinator, which gave the organization the capability to set up recycling programs in all districts of Greater Accra. In 2017, through funding through the Danone Ecosystem Fund, we were able to create the first waste picker-led sorting center called Pick It, which is located in Timmin, Newtown. And in 2019, we started working with GIZ, the federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia, to test different business models in both Kumasi and Accra. Next slide. So basically what we've been doing is that I think we've already discussed this, so we can go to the next one. So this was just a recap of basically what we have been doing. And as mentioned, most of the economy is informal. There's a lack of an extended producer responsibility scheme. So many local governments struggle with how they are going to pay for waste management. And we believe that partnering with the informal sector is a way to reduce the amount of money spent on waste collection. So when we look at Kumasi, it's very interesting. There's over 2 million people that live in Kumasi. It has an estimated growth rate of 5.4%, and basically it produces about 450,000 metric tons of waste annually, of which 16.5% is actually plastic waste. Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly is probably like most metropolitan assemblies. They basically don't have a direct role in plastic waste recycling. As we know, focusing in on one fraction of waste can actually be quite expensive. So really what they do is they look at the entire waste stream, but they often don't segregate it into fractions. And this is why the informal sector has become a formidable player in this particular area. Since there is absence of government participation, many people have learned to reuse and recovery different types of waste, plastic, aluminum, anything that's recyclable, and actually make a living off of it. Kumasi is also home to the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, which has piloted several plastic recycling and processing methods. This means that over the past few years, there's actually been a lot of graduate students that have explored a lot of different options in various second life solutions, from concrete to diesel. So when you look at Kumasi, it's very interesting because it's almost as if it's gearing towards a circular economy, though it's not quite there. On one end, you have an already established collection chain through the informal sector worker. And on the other end, you have young entrepreneurs that are looking at innovative second life solutions. But what we're interested in is how do you bridge that gap between the informal sector worker and then those individuals that are doing second life technology solutions that can really promote circularity and create even more jobs within the community. Next slide. So what Environment 360 has been doing is, first, we typically identify areas in low income areas that can be used as collection points. One of the things that we realize, as mentioned earlier, is that we have a polluter pays system. Although this system works very well in middle, upper class, business, and industrial districts, it has a tendency not to work so well in lower income areas, which are mainly urban informal settlements and coastal areas. This means that these areas often go without waste management. If they do have waste management, it is taken up in a communal style. This is why Environment 360 likes to work with municipal assemblies in these types of environments. We believe that informal sector workers can actually have the strongest work environment in these informal settlements where they typically live anyways. The next thing we do after setting up a collection point is that we actually organize informal sector plastic waste collectors, also known as waste pickers, around that particular site. One of the challenges we'll talk about later is local transportation. It's essential that when you are looking at plastic collection points, it's something that people can easily access. As a result, it makes more sense to organize people from the community around a particular plastic collection point versus having people that are further away bring plastic to that particular point. Once we've identified and trained these, or once we've identified these agents, Environment 360 then provides training to collectors that help them identify different types of materials. So everything from PET to PP to HDPE. We support in the development of micro collection networks so that they can increase their collection and increase their income through working as a team. And we provide basic business training, everything from leadership to bookkeeping. And what this does is it allows them to start to move their business from an informal business into a more formalized business where people are working as teams and they have some basic skills. Now, after this, collectors essentially are tasked with developing their own collection routes in their respective areas near the collection points. What we've realized in Kumasi is that typically these informal sector workers will get together and divide an area up among themselves. This ensures that basically everyone has access to the materials that they need, and it keeps conflict down among them. This is something that Environment 360 hasn't been overly involved in because we've learned these informal sector workers typically can handle this by themselves. Typically, how it works is collection points will set a purchase price for plastics that is slightly below the market price. So for instance, in Ghana, the purchase price of PET can go anywhere from 1 cedi to 1 cedi 50 pesos, depending on the type of material and the amount of processing that's been done. What the collection point would do would set maybe a buying price of 80 pesos per kilogram of plastic. When the collection point sells the materials, it puts money back into buying materials, and then it takes the extra revenue to cover operating costs. What this does, it allows each collection point to have some level of self-sufficiency. However, it should be noted that though there's some level of self-sufficiency, it's still not enough to really grow the collection point and have the impact needed to scale. Next slide. So to support each collection point in Kumasi, there are 2 in Kumasi. Environment 360 identified 27 different agents. Typically, how we assign agents is based on the size of the collection point. So the collection point in Asafo is quite small. It's on a communal area where there is a communal waste bin as well as a communal toilet. Our Parkosu collection point is a little bit larger. As a result, it has 17 different agents that work from there. What we did is we basically worked with these agents to train them to strengthen their existing plastic collection businesses. One important thing to note is that we've learned that informal sector workers are better when they've been doing it for years. So it's actually quite difficult to introduce someone new into the business. This means that when you're identifying people, they're not necessarily going to be people that you find that have interest. You should really try to work with individuals that have already been doing the business and understand the business. They have a greater success rate of collection, building networks, and bringing in more plastic. The organization typically sets up a management board for each collection point. Over the years, we actually tried many different ways. We've allowed the waste pickers to run the collection point themselves. We've tried to leave it solely to the municipal assembly to run the collection point, and we've tried to leave it to the community. What we've learned is that it takes a variety of expertise to efficiently manage a collection point. As a result, each collection point that we create, it has a board. The board typically consists of one individual that is a one individual that is a member of the solid waste department from the local assembly, Environment 360, as well as a plastic registered agent to that particular facility. Having diversified viewpoints really helps run a more efficient community collection point. The board is responsible for making critical decisions about the collection point. So when it comes to revenue, surplus, maintenance of machines, who's working there, it is essentially the board that makes these particular decisions and has been quite helpful in mitigating any community issues that might arise. Next slide. So there are a few challenges that have to be discussed with collection points. We know that many people are setting up collection points. They look really good, but they aren't without issues. We've actually been able to, please, can we go to the next slide? I think this is a duplicate. Yeah, so the challenges to collection points. One, there must be a local transportation established to ensure collection points don't become a nuisance. One of the issues that we have with collection points is a local transportation. Due to the volume of plastic collected and the size of collection points, it becomes very difficult to manage the rate at which you're collecting versus the rate at which you can move the materials. If you aren't careful, your collection point can very easily become a nuisance. This has been something that we haven't quite 100% figured out, but we're still working on. At first, we explored the opportunity of perhaps using Bola taxis, but unfortunately, this hasn't worked out since most Bola taxis are more interested in selling the plastic themselves. For those of you not familiar with Bola taxis, what they are basically individuals that have private cars that are not registered waste management companies, but still do some level of waste management collection within urban areas. They typically charge as they pick up, but the thing with them is that they actually segregate themselves. So to incorporate them into a local network, they felt as if the money wasn't as high. Having a local transportation network is absolutely critical for your collection point. If you don't have this, the collection point will essentially fail, or it will become a community nuisance. The second is the adaptation of technology is key for profitability. Environment 360 has had a lot of different collection points. And what we've realized is that if there's not some sort of technology at the collection point, it's just impossible for it to be profitable. And a large part of this is because typically you cannot set the markup of the cost of plastic much higher than you can set what you are purchasing for. So for instance, yes, you can technically sell plastic for 1 CD 50 pesos, but to get someone to sell to a collection point at 30 pesos, 40 pesos, particularly as an agent that basically purchases from other people, is almost impossible. Because there isn't a high markup, it means that you have to have some sort of technology that can add value. Recently, at the collection points financed by the German federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia, Environment 360 has implemented using flakers or shredders. So now every collection point we have actually has a flaker or a shredder so that the value can be increased and you can see up to a 30 or 40% markup on the plastics from when you collect it to when you sell it. The third point is you must have an identified supply chain for plastics collected to ensure a viable market and profitability. This sounds really simple. We all know that there has to be a viable market for whatever plastics you can collect, but we also need to realize that plastics is still a very volatile industry. I think even during COVID times, we saw a drastic change here in Ghana, where it went from bottles being able, blue and white, being able to collect it together, to there being no demand for blue bottles and people only wanting white bottles. In a country like Ghana, where the majority of our water bottles are actually a blue tint, this had a major impact on the market. You also have to be aware of the liquidity of buyers in the market. Once again, the plastics industry is still really flourishing, and sometimes buyers just cannot purchase everything that's been collected in the market. This is why it's a very delicate balance between which you can collect and which you can actually sell. This is also a more critical reason for why there has to be a speed up on adaptation of second life solutions, so that we can better feed these solutions or feed this plastic into local solutions versus just depending on exporting and bailing a lot of it. Next slide. So a few keys to success. When we look at all of our projects, there are a few things that really determine the success of a project. One, local municipalities must be actively engaged in the program and must be willing to allot space for activities. What we've learned about plastic collection points is that if someone has to purchase or lease the land, it's almost 100% impossible to make the business profitable. It comes with a myriad of issues, but it's just not available to be able to really push it. So what you have to do is you have to have somebody that's able to allot land. We've had success not only with local municipalities, but with chieftaincies as well, allotting land. But this is going to be a #1 key. The local municipality is also quite instrumental in helping identify informal sector workers and setting best practices and safety standards with working with those informal sector workers as well. #2, there must be some level of organization among informal sector workers participating in the program. As discussed before, what we've learned is it is very difficult to introduce people into the business. This business, particularly when it comes to collection points and management, is really better done by those people that have at least 2 years of experience. People that have 2 years of experience seem to be better at creating teams. They seem to be better at creating collection routes, and undoubtedly they just collect more. It's probably because a lot of them are just savvier. As mentioned, this is a very volatile business, so you have to have people that understand the ups and downs. If you are just entering this business for the first time, you might be very discouraged about the amount of work that you put in versus what you get back. As a result, you need someone that's savvy enough to better understand how things are actually working. #3, if a municipal assembly does embark upon this, you need a partner that understands the intricacies of the informal sector workers and can develop a program that creates shared value for informal sector waste collectors. What happened is when we first started a lot of our programs, we felt that providing infrastructure to informal sector waste pickers was really enough to get them excited. And what we realized is that there are a variety of other social benefits that they're looking for as well. As a result, you have to design a program that not only takes into account the amount of plastics they can collect, but also what are the other social benefits that can be given to them. Environment 360 is testing a micro collection scheme as well. We've used national health insurance registration for agents and their micro agents to motivate as well as we've used a variety of other social benefits, such as additional training to help really support these informal sector waste workers. But setting up a collection point alone is not enough to really motivate, to support and get them excited about what they're doing. Next slide. So here are just some activities. 90% of the individuals Environment 360 works with are going to be women. They are between the ages of 35 and 45. And what we typically do is we have creative capacity building training seminars. So here you see during these things, we actually take them through so that they better understand how they're going to be able to segregate their plastics. How are they going to mark their plastics? This way, when they're in the field, they know exactly how it's going to work. On the right side, you'll see a picker from Old Fadama who actually is preparing her materials for sale. Typically, she is considered a leader. So the plastics you've seen, she has purchased from other people in her community. She is responsible for ensuring the quality as well as materials aren't weighted down. If she provides materials where there's poor quality or the weight is not correct, then she is held responsible for that and deductions are made from future sales. Next slide. Here's actually a training with the Gomba Scrap Dealers Association. One of the things we've tested as well is, can you diversify scrap dealers and people that work in various parts of the recycled value chain into collecting alternative materials? And what we found out is that people like to really focus in on fractions. Though we've had some success with getting scrap dealers to participate in the collection of plastics, we've not had success with the entire association. It seems as if once people decide the type of plastics or fraction of the recyclable materials they're going to pick, they're very comfortable and very dedicated to doing this particular fraction of waste. Next slide. So this is the launch of the Asafo collection point in Kumasi. You'll notice that the infrastructure is very simple. Here we basically have two 20-foot containers with a shaded space. In between is where they actually shade and segregate their space. This particular facility also has a flaker as well. Once materials are flaked, it's placed into the containers until our private sector partner comes to pick up the materials from the area. When we look at the next slide, this is the Parcoso collection point. And one thing you'll realize about collection points is that the infrastructure does not have to be the same. As mentioned, we have 10 agents that operate from Asafo. Parcoso actually is set up very market style. So it's actually a wire mesh gate. And then at that wire mesh gate, we actually did have different tents, which act as stalls that people segregate. Then agents among themselves decide what points they're actually going to store their materials. They tag them, and then when it's time for collection, credit is given to them accordingly. Next slide. As mentioned, one of the things that we've done to help have a greater buy-in and incentive is actually to register agents and collectors onto the National Health Insurance Scheme here in Ghana. Although a lot of them don't necessarily use the National Health Insurance Scheme, they do actually appreciate having it as an option. And this is actually something that a lot of leaders use to really motivate their micro collection network and really have to make it to push and ensure that they have some sort of loyalty from the individuals that they are collecting with. So these types of incentives, if you can create them, it actually empowers the agent to create stronger teams that increase collection. Next slide. So when we look at West Africa and plastic waste management in general, I think there are a few things that cannot be overlooked. The informal sector must be considered and incorporated to create a strong value chain for plastics. You cannot deny that there's already an existing chain for plastics. What happens is when you focus too much in on private sector and you overlook informal sector workers, you're actually going to be almost starting over from scratch. It's not just about employing these informal sector workers in low-paying jobs. It's about empowering them to create their own businesses so that they can employ more people. When local municipal assemblies can work hand in hand with waste pickers, undoubtedly there are benefits for both parties that really drive plastic collection. Another thing is there must be a creation of private sector relationships to support financing of waste management schemes in Africa. One of the things that we didn't get a lot of time to touch on because there just wasn't time is the importance of extended producer responsibility schemes. I think that when we look at how we are going to finance waste management in Africa, there has to be the creation of some extended producer responsibility. This will allow capital to be put into the infrastructure of building these collection points, of creating a local transportation network, but also making sure that it continues to thrive. It's going to have to be that subsidy, and it's going to be critical that private sector fill that gap. The last thing is that we must create a shared value system for waste that encourages large-scale collection, and incentives are 100% necessary for a successful waste segregation program. Once again, as mentioned, if you believe that just setting up a collection point is enough to really drive people in, it's not really true. I think we also need to realize that although a lot of times we think of financial incentives, there are a lot of other things that the informal sector workers look at as well that are beneficial to them. That can be anything from health insurance to microcredit loan schemes, to loans for education or their wards. So you really have to be creative in what you offer to ensure that it makes sense financially. And then last, I think we have a video to show where essentially it will show the impact on the informal sector worker side. And just to give an update on some of the successes that we've had in Kumasi while we transition to the video, is that each collection point basically at this point collects around 4 tons of material per week. And we're actually expecting to be able to increase that to 7 tons per week by the end of 4th quarter.
Environment 360 is a Ghana-based NGO that supports creation of a circular economy by helping informal sector waste workers formalize their operations. Over the past 5 years, they have become the chosen recycling partner of many corporations, schools, and communities. Their recent partnership with GIZ and the federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia is expanding their work in Greater Accra and helping more waste pickers increase their income and reduce the amount of plastic litter found in Accra.
So today you will see that we will do a variety of activities that allow you to identify what your problems are in the current market, and then we can help develop solutions for those.
The Creative Capacity Building Programs, funded by the German federal state, equips these informal workers with much-needed skills to solve problems encountered on the field of work. These trainings give the workers a sense of motivation as well as knowledge to be able to collect more plastics or PETs, thereby reducing plastics largely.
So what I'm sorry 12 and that's 1 more. Okwa wonya because I'm for rushing to okwa wonya. Nti ya kwasisa ya wonia. Ya dibe share hini say kwa se baby born na se ya shija. Na dia kata ya hini anu. Afen subio ye wo groups I di sense ase na be ya lebi anti ye afen so watade a let be to so bi be say nipa na mo na ka bia mebo afen so sa on paboa ase na be ya dadua bi nkowo na e de ya lebi abrem.
At first, I never thought I would do it. I was thinking, I have a business, but it was not moving well. So I saw people picking. I was thinking, what can I do to just help my family? Then this thought came into me. At first, if I'm going to pick it, I used to hide myself. I don't want people to sell me. So the first one I took to the Environment 360, the resources that they gave to me was so helpful to me.
Bangre Madonna. I came over a grandma, my work, Papa, Suguapa. You my bag. Mava has girl, I'm about war. My poor mother program going in some of our no. My bag girls in Lion. In Lion, what can happen? I'm a Junkumu. That I Madonna Piota. I'm one of the grandma. Younger, you might not even about to be Joto. I'm a watch your corner of Piota Robert. Piota Robert, some of our girl, what if Conco, half at you. No more way, Hakwa. And no quality and one here, one.
kaje beni kan he wo mi e fi ko mi e ja kashi bona ka mi no mi ye ka fi e gbeke mi iya ja ko ya mra ona ko bia na mo fi amon lo e wo mi hu ni kan he ba wo mi na kashi e wa mi nlo nya main station e fi ahe ni mana makọ keke nke ba wo mi kenke ba hu en kenke te environmental 360 officer amahi okehan ni nashka ni chikala hu en ni so ma bo ana e ja ka shi mbele ke school e ba cha no
mi ankasa mi sun alekwi so bi nso mi ni capital mi de eye mi shasi once bi nso e break ye nti mi te se omo ye eyi recycling na me de me hu shem say my sister kakra omo to ameka na ma start e de ye liquid soap nti ona me ye say
tun da muka fara kwasto robobin nan mun ga kaman this year da aka yi adari nan ruwa bai shiga da ake mutane ba cikin bottle da ke choke cikin gototin nan da muka yi kwashe wannan kwanicin ga bai choke cikin gototin so shi ruwan bai shiga dakin kowa ruwan kuma bai shiga bai dokan kowa ruwan bai dokan kowa bai shiga dakin kowa amma muna continue kwashe wannan abu duka ya kare cikin gototin nan mu yi free daga Accra da ko ina.
What we are doing here today is called a creative capacity building session, which is a tool that we use with our informal sector workers to help them identify the challenges they face in the field and then be able to solve or create solutions for those particular problems that they face. So what a creative capacity building session does is it takes them through a variety of activities that teaches them how to think and solve their own problems independently. Through this program, we will empower 200 informal sector workers to actually build cooperatives so they can work together in groups to be able to harness and collect more plastic bottles or PET. So through this project, we're hoping to reduce the amount of plastic litter in Accra, while we are also hoping to strengthen these businesses and these individuals so that they have more disposable income for themselves. Typically, informal sector waste workers are often under-recognized, as well as the fact that they don't receive the pay that they should. A lot of them, this is a side income, but it's a very vital side income. So what we do is we try to give them strategies in which they can strengthen their collection methods so that they can work with other key stakeholders, and we strengthen their ability to work in a team so that they can actually collect more and then earn more.
In collaboration with GIZ, Environment 360 is focused on their vision of turning around the plastic waste situation in Ghana for good.
So this concludes my presentation for today. I guess if there's questions, then I can answer questions as well.
Well, thank you so much, Cordie. I'll hand over to Tara or Leslie now to take it from here. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Cordie. I don't see any questions in the Q&A box just yet, but please feel free to send those through. Cordie, in the meantime, would you mind commenting on basically the fact that that the informal sector is obviously playing such a vital role in keeping waste off the streets, but in sort of a circular economy, could you comment on their role and how they might be sort of kept in the value chain if people weren't to litter, for example?
Yeah, I think when it comes to keeping informal sector workers in the value chain, it's important that we move them towards formalization. And this is why incorporation into local municipal assemblies is really key. One of the things is that municipal assemblies are typically the individuals that assign contracts that show where individuals can and can't collect waste and the type of waste that they collect. For instance, in Kumasi, working with the municipal assembly, once again, these agents at the collection points have been able to be registered. And what this does is that it legitimizes the work that they do to community members. This means that it's easier for agents or leaders to recruit additional people and then move into formalization. Fortunately, here in Ghana, we have a department of cooperatives, which Environment 360 is hoping that some of the individuals that we've been working with can actually move into developing cooperatives. Once again, the challenge with plastic cooperatives is that they have a tendency not to be as financially viable as cooperatives like you see in agriculture. And this is just due to the low value of plastic. So when you look at a circular economy, this is why I said it really is essential that these informal sector workers, even when they're formalized, they're really plugged into local solutions and people that are processing material locally so that the value can be raised. If we continue on the trend of essentially just exporting raw material, we're going to miss a lot of the opportunity that really we can harness economically from plastic recycling.
Thank you so much, Cordie. Can you comment on where the material is recycled? It sounds like it's not recycled in Ghana. Is it exported, and do you know to which country?
So here in Ghana, we actually do have a strong local value chain for hard plastics. So HDPE and PP are recycled here locally, and they also have twice the value of PET or plastic bottles. Now plastic bottles are mainly going to be flaked or baled, and they go to Europe. Mainly people sell to Germany. They sell to Spain as well. We have a few people that sell to India. But once again, when you look at the price of HDPE, which is 2 CD 80 pesos to 3 CD 20 pesos, compared to the price of PET of 1 CD when it's unprocessed. I mean, it definitely goes to show the benefit of having a local market that can absorb the product and then make something viable out of it locally.
Thanks, Cordie. So there's a bit of an echo. It sounds like the local market for HDPE, for example, is much better than the market for exporting waste, which is enthusiastic to hear about the local opportunities for recycling. I see that Tony has his hand raised. Tony, would you like to comment?
Well, firstly, thank you very much indeed for a very inspiring talk and so well presented. Then my next point is, have you had contact with the similar groups in South Africa and sharing ideas? Because a lot of what you are talking about is also happening here in South Africa, with the informal workers also being organized, also being formally recognized by government, by the municipalities and so forth. So, and I think that your lessons and some of the lessons learned in South Africa are similar and others are different, and an exchange of ideas might be really great. So have you had any contact? And if not, then let's plot a way forward.
So I would love to have more contact. You're absolutely right. The South African movement for informal sector workers is really a base of a lot of our work, and we read a lot of the case studies that come from there, which is how we've learned some of the lessons for our market a little bit quicker. However, though, I would like to see more of an engagement between Environment 360 and those other agencies that really are on ground supporting informal sector workers. As mentioned, one thing we've learned is that basically there are just a lot of similarities across the board. And even though there are nuanced cultural differences or societal differences which might dictate something different, overall, it's really a shared battle. In South Africa has shown that there's actually potential great progress and process in working with informal sector workers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll undertake then to link you to some of those in South Africa, and we look forward to learning of the relationship that you develop. I'd like also to, I see there is another question, so I'll share, I'll come back later. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. There's a question that says, thank you for the presentation. On the issue of financing an extended producer responsibility scheme in Ghana, to what extent are the informal sector or NGOs aware of Ghana's environmental excise tax on plastic imports and attempts being made by stakeholders and partners to pressure the government to release these funds for plastic waste management?
You know, I think that this has been an ongoing battle. I think one of the issues, as you know, informal sector workers typically don't play at the policy level, which is why it's very critical to get them organized so that they can have a voice. This environmental excise tax, one of the key challenges is that when the legislative instrument was actually set up, it required a board or a trust to be over to administer funds. That was never set up. And as a result, the money has gone into the general coffers. Recently, government of Ghana did decide to introduce a new environmental tax in which it says this money will be put directly into environmental issues. However, I don't think that there has been a clear roadmap to see how much of this is going to go into the support of the informal sector versus how much will go to setting up collection points for private individuals versus how much goes to maybe education and awareness on segregation programs. So I think until government releases a clear roadmap of how it would like to divide the taxes, it's still very unclear if the informal sector that's actually doing the hard work will be considered.
Thank you. Thank you, Cordie. There seems to be another slight echo. There aren't any other questions yet in the chat box, so please feel free to send those through. Otherwise, Tony, you had another question or another point that you wanted to bring up?
Yes, I was intrigued that Ghana is actually exporting flaked material, particularly PET, to Europe, to Germany. Yet we do have very successful PET recyclers within Africa. And one of the issues that we're looking at in the development of national and regional action plans is that when a particular country does not necessarily have the volumes to be able to support the recycling industry in its own country, then several countries could get together to develop a system, and it could be, in this case, pellets or flakes of PET, and it could go to a single point, which of course would lower the carbon footprint, lower the costs, increase the value for Africa, and so forth. Do you think this is a possibility? Ghana is not too far away from some other fairly large producers, but I've not looked into this personally. What's your view on this?
So, Tony, I think you're right on the money again. I think that this is actually going to be a critical component in developing a proper waste management strategy. I think one of the challenges that's faced is always going to be data collection. So there might be the actual collection going on, but being able to trace and validate those numbers is a whole other issue. Fortunately for Ghana, we're situated right next to Cote d'Ivoire in Nigeria, which really have had booming recycling markets. I do think that there is a huge opportunity if Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and even Benin got together and really looked at how can those on-ground players really work together to create a central spot that could then perhaps be a powerhouse for PET material here within the Africa region. And I think that this could attract more investment, particularly of those individuals that can process PET locally.
That would be really good, because I know that Petco Is there an echo? Sorry, for you people?
Yes,
Okay.
there does need to be an echo, but you can go ahead, Tony. Cordie, I think if you have headphones, if you could plug those in, that might solve the issue.
Okay, because I know that Petco is recycling nearly 70% of the pet products in South Africa, and they're also operating in Kenya. It might certainly be worthwhile to have Petco help at least guide the process within, as you say, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, and Benin, because that should, amongst those, the volume just must be there. And if one does, as you suggest, and they pelletize it or flake it, then the transport costs come down, the greenhouse gas emissions are much lower, and there's profit for Africa. And that profit is linked to jobs and job creation and putting economy back within, into the country. So I think this is certainly something that we should consider for regional action plans.
Yeah, I agree. Nigeria has recently attracted some investment. Recyclon, I know, is coming there. So I know Nigeria in particular is really geared up to have some investment in the PET industry. And I think that if West Africa can concentrate on maybe how to get its material to Nigeria versus sending it overseas, I think that it would be a win-win situation. And this is really when you start to support circularity as well. As you mentioned, this is when jobs are starting to create. This is throughout the value chain, from transportation to collection to processing. And this is what I think we are all pushing for when we talk about the circular economy, and particularly when we look at the context of Africa. We really need to be creating livable wage income for individuals in some of our poorest communities.
Fantastic. Now I've got one further aspect. I loved your film. Have you been approached by the team that's developing 100 African Voices to develop a film on Africa in which people are being invited from all parts of Africa to give a voice to the African context, a voice to the African needs, etc. Because I'd love it if you could make a contribution there. And if you haven't been approached, then I'm going to also make that link for you.
Thank you so much, Tony. I haven't been approached, but I would definitely like to discuss, because I do think that we really have to start looking more internally for solutions. And this is really going to be the catalyst for change.
Well, thank you very much indeed. I see there is another question.
Thank you, Tony. There's a question here in the Q&A box that says, are you in contact with the UNIDO Ghana, which is implementing the Ghana National Plastic Action Plan? It is a global plan for setting a circular economy for plastics in Ghana.
So yes, Environment 360 has been looked at a key stakeholder in these discussions, and we have been able to give input. If you look at the model that we've been using, it's actually based on the National Plastic Action Plan that government of Ghana would like to use to implement its plastic strategy. So if you look at our programs, we design and test collection points. We work on strengthening the plastic value chain, creating incentives for the collection of plastic waste, integrating municipal assemblies into plastic waste, incorporating or formalizing the informal sector as well, and then getting voluntary agreements from private sector. So we actually try to align all of our activities with what the government is hoping, in order to provide key lessons in how government should perhaps consider moving forward when financing a particular model.
Thank you so much, Cordie. That's wonderful to hear, and wonderful to hear that Ghana is in the process of setting up circular economy action plans. I don't see any other questions so long in the Q&A box, but if anyone has any at a later stage, you're welcome to either email us, webinars@sstafrica.org.za, or to contact Cordie, but we'll happily pass along any questions that you have. In the meantime, I think we could possibly close here for this afternoon, unless anyone has any questions. But in the meantime, I'd just like to say, Cordie, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. I think it's it's very inspiring, and it's wonderful to hear all the answers that you've given us today. I think it's quite very insightful, and a lot of things that a lot of viewers might not have been aware of until now.
And thank you so much for hosting these discussions. I think that they are really relevant at this particular point as we really start to understand that plastics is a global issue and not just an individual issue based on countries. So I'm very happy that you've taken the time to spotlight Africa and its waste management issues and ongoing initiatives so that we can start to discuss the dialogue on how to move forward and create circular solutions here on the continent.
Thank you, Cordie. Yes.
Cordie, from me too, thank you very much. Abdullah, would you like to close the afternoon?
I think Abdullah's internet might have dropped a little bit there. But yes, thank you so much, Cordie. Ideally, we are certainly focusing on Africa at this time, and solutions that that could be explored, and ways that the different countries can help each other, and how each country can sort of assign an action plan based on their individual needs, and those of the countries around them. Otherwise, I think we can close off here. Again, thank you so much, Cordie. It was really great to have you here with us this afternoon and to hear all the insights you provided. Thank you so much, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon further, and look forward to seeing you on Thursday.